Ladies and gentlemen, it's that time again. This is Adults Talking About Cool Stuff, ATACS episode 18. It's the end of July. I don't know where time went, but it's gone that way, and we have to chase after it as quickly as we can. But today we have a little bit of a smaller group. Mr. Will from Greenville, North Carolina. How are you, Mr. Will?
I'm making it through.
Making it through? Are all the things going?
As they always do.
As they always do. Also, normal fixture, Mr. Flex from Raleigh, North Carolina. What's going on, Flex?
It's going pretty good. It's funny you say normal fixture. I think I've been on every recorded and published episode of ATACS.
And I think you've been on several that got eaten by the technology machine, too, so...
Yeah, there's some that I wasn't here for, but those did not make it out. So as far as I'm concerned, I still have perfect attendance.
Perfect attendance, 100%
I also have a correction to make.
Okay.
To myself. On the last episode, we were talking about Castlevania. I incorrectly said that Simon Belmont was the one in Rondo and Symphony. And that's wrong, because that's Richter. So, shame on me. I will correct myself now.
Editor's note.
Uh-huh.
Editor's note, the normal fixture is wrong and fired. And moving on from Atlanta, Georgia is Mrs. Stephanie. Hello, Stephanie.
Hello.
How is things going in your world?
I'm going to experience the last week of freedom before it starts. So the next time I'm on a podcast, I'll be in school.
Yeah. So thanks for joining us in the ATAC summer session. We'll see you next year.
If I don't die from all the inhalants from my art supply, yes, I'll be around.
Got to watch out for that. And I am your host. I'm Paul, also from Atlanta. And we're here to talk about cool stuff, talk about video games. I know we were talking a little bit pre-show, and we don't have a ton of video games to talk about, but actually, Mr. Will, you just put out a whole list of stuff that you've been kind of playing. So, you know where I would like you to start? I would like you to start with Modern Warfare Remastered, because I really want to know. I really want to know what you've been doing with that. So yeah.
Well, so this is one of those types of things, and I think I've probably mentioned it to some of you guys privately, where I have some friends who really like playing Call of Duty. And so I sometimes will buy games that are a decade old to play with my buddies.
Yeah.
And Modern Warfare, the first Modern Warfare is actually a decade old now. Just to put that out there.
Yeah. So that's where I am. And I guess there are a couple things that are different. One is, although a lot of the map packs, which are a total rip anyway, that were purchased for all of the games after the original Modern Warfare, apparently I have never purchased or played the maps, I guess the extra maps that have been the bonus maps that were released for the first game. So some of those maps are new for me. Now, I guess in some ways, there's a little bit of bitterness that you may detect in my voice. And not that I'm not having a good time, but for instance...
Hey, Will, are you bitter?
Those maps were released for the same price that they were released a decade ago. Actually, I think it's more. I think I read that they're $5 more now. So if you want your remastered decade-old maps, you need to prepare to shell out $5 more, because that's what's normal now.
So what is it for the base remastered? Is it $40?
$50? I think.
50?
Wow. No. I think it's 40, and then I ended up paying
40.
Yeah, I ended up paying 50 because I bought the map pack and it was on sale for $5 off. So I ended up paying 50 to get my decade old
$40 and 3 map packs for $5 each or something?
No, I think there was only 1 map pack for the first game.
Oh. Okay.
And so that was all purchased. I guess some of the biggest changes, and like I said, I think I've mentioned this to some of you guys, are when I first played Modern Warfare, it was pretty much the reason that I bought a 360. some friends were like, let's play this game. We play it on this thing. And so I bought the thing, and I had never really used a controller really since, I don't know, GameCube or something. And it was it took some getting used to, and especially to play a first-person shooter on a controller.
Yeah, I mean, that's a fast game.
And so I was very bad to begin with. And there were certain maps that just kind of required you to use a certain strategy that I could not produce. And so I remember there were a couple that I did okay on, but I used a lot of automatics. I used a lot of shooting from the hip. I did not use a lot of sniper rifles. I did not use a lot of 3-round burst M16 straight shooting guns because I could not shoot straight. And so that's been a little different, that now I can shoot straight. And so it's opened up some of the maps and led me to kind of some of the opinions that some of my friends have of them. There are some maps that my friends have always loved, and I get in them and I'm like, oh, what a misery fest. And now I am a little bit better at it. So that's fun. I'm having a decent enough time. I still, it's one of these interesting things because there are a lot of people out there who feel as though, as though, I mean, that's their gaming activity. They pick a Call of Duty game and then they just play it all the time, you know, and it's interesting to me that certain people, like, it seems to be endlessly entertaining for certain people. And it seems like what they're doing is, it's like that man is the most dangerous game, because, you're playing its people and their strategies, can adapt and change. And so for some people, that's like the best competitive experience, or the best experience that will pull out your, latent abilities, make you.
William, this Call of Duty does not deserve you. You're
rise
so deep.
to the occasion.
You're so deep for this game that is just yelling at you and you're shooting at things.
I get what you're saying, because, like, I mean, people obviously get really into like Dota or StarCraft or fighting games like Street Fighter or whatever, and like they get really into that. It's funny to think of, for some reason, to me, it's still kind of like funny to think about Call of Duty in that way, because Call of Duty's, I guess, I don't know what the right word for it is, but it seems like much more of a mess than those games. There's just like, it doesn't feel as tight, I guess, in terms of like its competitive design.
Yeah, and I think there are certain things that are that make it a little rougher. I think that 3 times frag grenade makes it a little harder, because that really, you can do some work with that, and
so
sometimes.
I have a few questions, but this is a good time for the first one. Did they rebalance anything for the remaster, or is it just straight up all the same abilities?
So everything is the same.
Okay.
But and this will be a fun time to talk about this. They added loot boxes and Call of Duty currency.
Oh,
you got to be kidding me! I mean,
not kidding at all.
Come on,
no.
Activision. You're charging a ridiculous amount for this game. You're charging a ridiculous amount for these maps, and then you want to come
way
in.
Too much for this game, by the way.
And then and then you want to come in and you want to add the most 2017 jank ass shit you possibly can for microtransactions. Ooh, that's just silly. I mean, come on, guys.
It is
Jank ass shit.
That's true. That's true.
Back of the box.
Scientific term.
So the things that there are different categories of loot boxes that you can get. And each of these boxes drops different crap. But a lot of it is cosmetic crap. So there are these backgrounds that you can get, that your name is on, and then there's an emblem that you get beside that. There are different camouflages for weapons and camouflages for your character. One of the neat things about this game is that you can actually play as a female.
That's neat.
And you can kind of customize your character. There seem to be like hundreds of different playable character models, or at the very least faces.
Okay.
And so that's kind of an interesting thing. Now, the thing that I don't like is that there are like sort of, it's almost like I don't know what you call it, but when you buy some of these boxes, sometimes you'll get like a piece that can go towards a gun. And then
Okay.
if you buy enough of these boxes, you get all of the pieces. And once you get all the pieces, you can get a new gun. And these guns were not in the original game. Some of them are kind of powerful. So that's kind of a lame thing that in some ways forces you to kind of interact with that crappy system. And not only that, but you of course you earn these what they call depot credits for completing matches, and you can unlock chests with these depot credits. But of course, there's also a premium currency called Call of Duty dollars or something, and you can buy these with your real money and open better chests or some shit. And I'm sure somebody's done it. I certainly haven't, but that's the new hotness. I mean, that's the advancement that 2017 needed in its modern warfare is that garbage.
So you have like banana boxes that you can open with banana dollars, or you can use dollars that you banana dollars. It sounds really dumb.
It's not the best thing, but basically, I've been playing a bunch of that, or at least a little bit of that, and it's kind of fun because I'm in a different spot. But I can't say, and I guess I was getting at this earlier, I can't say I find it as endlessly entertaining as some of my buds. To me, and maybe this is because I'm just not a good competitive player in general, but like I kind of do the same thing every game, and it feels like if I'm playing the same map, then I'm probably going to do the same thing that I did the last time I played that map.
Or you know, William, I think you also need to realize maybe part of the reason why you can't quite get into it as much is because you did put about 5,000 hours into this game circa 2010. I mean, that's that's a lot of hours.
You're making good points.
I would also say Call of Duty kind of promotes doing the same thing every game.
Right. That's probably true. But really, as Steph said earlier, I've probably already talked about that one enough. But now you know.
I do have one. I'm really curious about something because I mean I know our friend group that you're playing with, and they're into Call of Duty. What is the last new Call of Duty game that you guys had played?
I probably played a tiny bit, not very much. I think the rest of the crew played more than I did. Of Ghosts, maybe.
Okay.
Or let's see.
So
Black Ops 2 we played a little bit. Was Black Ops 2 prior to Ghosts?
Yeah, Black Ops 2 was 2012, Ghost was 2013, Advanced Warfare was 2014. I don't remember what was 2015, maybe Black Ops 3? 26 last year. Yeah, Black Ops 3 must have been 2015, and last year was Infinite Warfare.
Yeah.
Okay. I think the last one that I played a lot of was Black Ops 2. I bought Ghosts, but didn't really like it. So probably only played, 10 hours or so, and then stopped and sold it or something.
Yeah, so I guess, and do you know if the rest of the crew has kept up with it, or?
I don't think I know that they played Ghost more than I did.
Okay.
But I'm sure
last year.
Yeah, and I'm sure that there are a couple of them in the play group that have played all of them. But I think at least for myself and my closest friends, I think that's where it was.
Yeah. So my follow-up question to this is does going back to Modern Warfare Remastered, do you think that, I mean, it sounds like for you, you're not necessarily getting into it, but do you think for the general person in the group, is there some kind of nostalgia appeal to going back to this one? Or I guess what's the incentive to jump onto this as opposed to keeping up with the new ones? Because it sounds like maybe they haven't been keeping up with the new ones as much.
Yeah. And, I think part of it, they really do have, my play group really does have, kind of some rose-colored glasses on this one. They think that this one's the best one.
Okay.
And personally, and I think I probably mentioned this to a couple of you guys, the first Black Ops games, in my opinion, is the best of Call of Duty's multiplayer.
Which
but
one
I
of
am.
the, I think that game might have been put on. Oh, well, never mind. Nope, never mind. I'm wrong. Continue.
Okay.
Sorry.
But yeah, so that's probably my favorite of the multiplayers. But this one, I think, perhaps I think they think there's an elegance about the set kill streaks. None of them are particularly super strong. I mean, the helicopter can be really good in certain maps, but compared to things like AC-130s and attack dogs and stuff that's in the games after this, they're not all that strong. It's tough for me to really argue as to why they like this one the most, because I don't know that I totally get it.
Okay. I mean, they're not wrong that there's like a simplicity to this one. As time has gone on, they've gotten like a little more just bloated with extra options and stuff that may not necessarily make them better.
Yeah, I will say that for me, I like it when, you take a couple more hits, not that you're doing Halo type of taking Halo damage, but that you are taking enough so that, if you just someone just sees you and you're in a bad situation, you can't, you're not totally done, like maybe you can duck behind something. And in some of the later and later games, it seems like your character seems to go down a little faster. So for me, with my aging hands, that's not really what I'm about. But anyway, so that's Modern Warfare Remastered in all its glory, and all its decade-old dust.
Yeah, and that's one of those, like, I knew it came out. I didn't realize how much garbage that they'd put into it.
Well, I mean, it was hot garbage from the beginning, because originally they attached it to Infinite Warfare so that you couldn't actually play it without buying Infinite Warfare.
Right.
And they pretended that it was going to be that way. Up until they
like
realized there was
lie
more
to see
money.
through ever.
Yeah, and up until they realized they could make more money, or up until they thought that perhaps they had milked enough players into buying Infinite.
I guarantee there was some magic number of Infinite Warfare sales that once sales dropped below that number, they'd split it out.
Right.
Yeah.
But also, the other amusing part is if you got the Infinite Warfare bundle with Modern Warfare Remastered, Remastered was basically adding $20 to that bundle, but then when they split it out on its own, it cost $40. So that's another fun thing.
Yeah. They're like, well, they wanted to punish me for not buying their crappy game. So apparently I was punished, and I took.
Apparently, Will, take your punishment.
Yeah.
I did it.
So, all right. Well, let's move away from things that are depressing
and old.
What else has been going on that you'd like to talk about, Will?
Well, let's see. I guess I'll talk for just a second about Orcs Must Die, because to me it scratches a really fun itch. For anyone who's not familiar with Orcs Must Die Unchained, it's got a long and tumultuous history. It was, of course, by the developers of Orcs Must Die and Orcs Must Die 2. Orcs Must Die 2 being just just an amazingly fun tower defense game. So it's sort of in some ways it's a tower defense game, but you basically play from a third person. You're playing in a certain map, much like tower defense, but there are things like wall traps, ceiling traps, floor traps, and then other and as opposed to towers. And so I guess in some ways, how in certain games there are certain spots where you can put certain towers. I guess Orcs Must Die kind of plays off of that a little bit, but it's played from the third person. So when Orcs Must Die Unchained first came out, they were wanting to make a competitor to like MOBA games. And I don't know, I guess they just wanted a piece of that pie, but they already had a huge fan base who loved those games just for what they were. And so after it sort of floundered around, got terrible Steam reviews, um, they finally sort of switched it back up and made the focus of the game the survival mode again, which is pretty much what it was in Orcs Must Die 2. They
Gotcha.
still have a competitive mode in it they call Sabotage. I don't think it's anywhere near as popular as the survival. I can't say for sure, but I do know that there was a substantial number of people who really were wanting Orcs Must Die 3, and instead they got, Orcs Must Mediocre MOBA. And
that sounds like no fun.
Yeah, and so it's actually a lot of fun because to me, first of all, there are like 16 different characters or something like that in this one. In the previous game, there was only like 2. And so each of the characters kind of has their own sort of thing going. So, for instance, there's one guy named Temper who his thing is rage, and so as he sort of attacks enemies, he gains rage, and he can use that rage to do abilities. But of course, the developers of the game have a great sense of humor, and so Temper is really, really mild mannered when you hear him talking. And so as you drop chaps and stuff, he says like, "That looks like that could hurt somebody," and stuff like that, because he's just a good time. Also, there's a ghost named Oziel who kind of drops these jars of souls. There's a little girl with a book who's sort of like coming straight out of Hogwarts or something, and she hasn't got total control over her magic yet.
Yeah.
Her name's like Zoe. So all the characters really have a pretty unique personality, and some of them actually even the quotes, they actually have like friendly rivalries between the two of them. So there's a lot of personality to the game. But to me, the fun part, of course, is looking at what sort of enemies you're going to be dealing with, looking at the layout of the map, figuring out how you can path the enemies through it, and then, of course, what traps would be ideal to use for which part. So there are traps that slow enemies down, deal damage, catch them on fire. My favorite traps in the game are the physical traps. So some of the maps actually have like pits of lava or pits of like green goo, and you can use things like flip traps that, well, the enemies will walk over them and then you'll just throw them off the level into this like lava or back into the water or something like that. So that to me is endlessly entertaining, watching these orcs fly off the map and and stuff. And it's kind of cartoony, so it is ridiculous like that.
Yeah.
But we've probably I played this actually with Ryan, who's another regular on our podcast, and we've probably put something like 65 hours in. So
Oh, wow.
there's really a lot of orcs that have been killed.
Yeah. Are you? Is that 65 hours done with it, or are you still going?
No, we still have more to go.
That is a lot of orcs to kill.
Yeah, and so, but part of the issue with the game. So first of all, I will say that in that genre, and there's not a lot of games in that genre. I think the only other one that comes to mind immediately is Dungeon Defenders. And that's kind of in the same genre in a sense. But Orcs Must Die for me scratches an itch that it's kind of like tower defense, but at the same time, because your character has attacks. And some of the characters have something like 5 or 6 different abilities. So it's tower defense, and it has that planning element. But at the same time, there's so much that you do while you're playing that it's a lot more engaging than traditional tower defense. You're not just putting your traps there and like waiting until you make enough money to upgrade them and then just kind of staring at them shooting the enemies. Like there's a way that you can play the physical part of the game, the third person shooting part of the game, better or worse. And, your success can depend on that, as well as, your trap placement and how you path and that sort of stuff.
Gotcha.
The issue with it is that, first of all, it's a free-to-play game. And so they've thrown all kinds of nonsense in that. So one of the things that's weird is every time you finish a level, you get chests. And these chests give you traps. And you unlock, like, trap cards, I guess. So like, for instance, you might unlock a trap that says like spike trap 55. And then once you get a total of 100 spike traps, you can upgrade your spike trap to make it do more damage. But those drops are kind of random. So there are some times that you're like, well, maybe you're not getting the cards for the trap that you like to use the most. Maybe you can see a scenario where someone else might have actually gotten those and they might be more effective at a certain map. And along the same lines, you gain what are called account levels. And as you gain account levels, your character just does more damage statically. And so that can be really frustrating because if you're not doing as well as you want on a map, someone else could do better on that map just by having played the game a lot more and then being statically better because they just deal more damage, even if their strategy is not as good as yours. So that can be a little frustrating.
Yeah.
Also, there are what are called guardian spots in every map. And for instance, some of the guardian spots all have an icon. If you put a guardian in that spot that has the icon, that guardian will do something like 25 to 30% more damage. So some of them are like, there's a giant guy with a shield and a sword. And you can put him in a shield spot. If you do that, then he's a lot better. And those guardians, you can drop 2 of them per map per character. So if you're playing with 2 characters, you can drop a total of 4 guardians. You can't heal them. And if they basically just stay in that one spot and act sort of as like another barrier for the enemies. If they kill him, then he's kind of gone for good, unless you have another one that you can drop. But the issue is, to me, like I haven't actually unlocked. You also get the guardians by opening the chest, and I haven't actually got a guardian of every symbol. So that can also be frustrating because that means that if we played a certain map and someone had actually had the guardians of that symbol, then their guardians are doing 25% more damage to all the enemies than mine are, just because I didn't happen to open those in my little chest. So things like that are irritating, and so it's sort of I've got kind of a love-hate relationship with Orcs Must Die, in that I always have a good time with it, but I'm always struck at just how much a better game it would be if they just let me, pay $40 or something and then just get everything, and you just got you could just do whatever you wanted to. Like, let's say I wanted to upgrade, maybe you give me some sort of in-game experience and I can spend that to upgrade whatever trap I want rather than having to worry about opening the right kind. Or if I want to get a guardian, maybe I can use that same currency to buy a guardian instead, or whatever, but to me it's just kind of irritating. But
it's always a bummer when you like the core of a game, but then kind of the model around it kind of detracts from what you're enjoying.
Exactly.
And like you said, you've played like 60 plus hours. Is much of that time spent like trying to, I don't know, grind or collect random drops or something that kind of gets around some of the hurdles the game puts up? Or,
well, no, but in some ways. So I've never actually grinded to get more copies of a trap or to try and get a certain guardian, but I have grinded to get account levels. So for instance, like the different levels that you play, they have a certain recommended account level. So when you first start, those maps are designed for people whose account levels are like 1 to 6 or something like that. But where we are now in the game, the levels are designed for people with account levels like 56 to 60. And sometimes we'll actually finish all of the maps that are available that are kind of within our account levels, and we still won't have the necessary account level, or at least the recommended account level, to do the next map. Which to me is tough because technically we could do it. We might not do as well as we would otherwise, but then it will be tough to really workshop our performance because I feel like there are so many different variables, like, account levels, trap levels, because at the same time, as you're leveling up, you're also getting more and more chests. So who knows, maybe your traps aren't powerful enough. Like, there are all these little free to play annoyances that make it really hard to critique your strategy. So I have, but of course, when I do that, when I grind to get the account levels, I'm still unlocking chests. And so, I guess in some ways it doesn't seem, and it's still relatively fun, but I'd rather just continue on with the maps that we haven't beaten than play this other nonsense. But anyway, I've already said way too many words, so I'll calm it down.
All right.
That's interesting. Yeah.
So, gonna go ahead and talk a little bit about what Steph and I have been playing, which is Final Fantasy XII Zodiac Age. We're done with that after exactly how many days was it? Like 18 days.
We got it on the 11th, so
And we
beat
beat
it last night.
Yep.
Wow.
So 18 days, and Final Fantasy XII Zodiac Age is done.
Yeah, that's insane because that's not a short game.
No, I think our final count on playtime was like, what, 70-ish hours?
I want to say 71 something.
Okay. Yeah, so the way that we kind of ended up splitting that game up is Steph did a lot of the grinding and several of the hunts, and then we really only moved forward with story stuff when we were, both sitting down to play. So that explains at least some of the, running through that game. But the other piece of it was the fast forward function, the one where you can push the button and go at times 2 or times 4 speed.
Best feature. Oh my god, love it so much. I hated it so much at first because your characters look ridiculous. They look so stupid, but it's so nice.
Yeah, and there's a lot of filler in that game when it comes to the hunts, which basically are just like, hey, we're going to pick a spot that is as far away as it can possibly be if you're going, to like go to the nearest warp crystal. So it would take you, like 20 minutes just to run to the spot to kill the thing. Well, when you're at times 4 speed, it only takes 5 minutes because that's how math works. And that really did help out a lot because there was times when we would sit down and we would play for just like an hour, but we'd have the times 4 speed on almost the entire time. So really, we were getting in 4 hours of playtime.
Yeah. So you said your clock read like 70 hours. But with the speed up, that actually probably amounts to, I don't know, like
I don't
90,
know.
100.
No, I don't know if the speed up affected the clock or not. I never actually checked.
Yeah.
No, it does. It doesn't affect the clock at all.
Yeah, I'm assuming it doesn't, which means in like normal speed time, you actually probably took closer to 100 hours, I would guess.
Sure, yeah, and there was so he was talking about the hunts, but to refresh anyone who played it but hasn't played it in a long time or not played it at all. So you get an option for 7 of these hunts, which you just go and you kill the big bad in an area that's causing trouble for people. And that kind of comes out in sections, like you beat a big story plot and then you get 8 hunts to go on. And yeah, I couldn't even imagine how long the hunts would have taken without this speed enhancer system that they have. And there's something 12 espers in the game, your summons. We only got 5 of them.
What is
one more
esper?
patch. An esper is your Ifrit, your Shiva, from the other Final Fantasy games. All the names that you're familiar with that you would summon in those games are now
Will is familiar with.
Yeah, those are airships now, and you have espers that are correlated with the Zodiac signs and they're weird looking, and I never use them because they're not as good as your own character's power ups that you can chain.
Yeah, and
so to further clarify for Will, espers are summons which are really, really large and powerful creatures that you can call forth periodically to do big damage.
But they're useless also, so
yeah,
there's no point in using them.
From a narrative standpoint, they're kind of like demigods. From a gameplay standpoint, they're annoying.
We never.
I ended up not doing a lot of hunts in 12 because I always had in the back of my mind that this is no longer a goal that I'm going to do. But when I finished that game, it took me 60 hours to do the main game. And I always thought the hunts were really cool, but I had already sunk so much time in the game, I had moved on to other stuff. And I always had in the back of my mind that I'd return to that game someday and actually do all the hunts because I liked those. But then it never actually did. The speed up thing definitely would have helped that. But how many hunts did you guys do you think? And did you do any post beating the game, or when you finish the story, did you stop?
We stopped after we finished the story. So there's
because I know there's a bunch of hunts that I think you can that like go above and beyond the main story.
Yeah, and I think we actually saw most of them.
Yeah, like I said, they come out in these patches of certain numbers, and we didn't finish the last batch.
Yeah, because the last batch was like 15 or something like that. It was just a ginormous number.
It wasn't. It was as much as the others.
Tough. Like those are probably the toughest fights in the game.
Yes.
Yeah. But and like the game was really fun. From like setting up your gambits and like kind of like watching the systems that you set up, like how they like interact with each other and interact with enemies. But I thought that it just kind of petered out at the end. Like the story it just ended up not. I mean, it was good right up until like the last, I don't know, maybe 20%. And then after that, it just kind of, I don't know, just petered out. It's really the best thing that I can say. I mean, it just felt like everything wrapped up really quickly. And I didn't really feel like that I got any really nice feel, like satisfaction from the way the story ended. It's just like, all right, that's done. Now everyone's going to go back to their thing that they were doing, and that's the end of that. And
like from a gameplay, because I had never finished the story. Like I had gotten maybe halfway-ish through the game and then had to stop when it originally came out. And as far as the story goes, like I really loved these characters. They were complex. They didn't all just get along and become best friends like in the first like hour. Like, they all had their own agendas, and I was really into it, and I loved this conflict and this war and these other nations.
Yeah.
But then, I think you're right about the last 25% of the game. I was like, I don't care, and I'm a little bit finished. I just want to run around and stab things, and I don't really care about your story. It got very the anime at the end, which I know is a Final Fantasy thing,
But that story went from no anime to the anime pretty daggum quickly.
Yeah, and furthermore, like, at the end, like the characters, like you say, like they go their own separate way. But like right before the end, everyone's like, "It's okay, we can do this because you've got your friends." And then all of them split up, and I'm like, "Oh, I guess we aren't really friends, then, are we?" Okay.
You can do this because friendship is about as anime as it gets. That's a lot of what I remember about that. Like, I remember liking the characters and the setting. Like, I really like the Evil East setting. Yeah. But I remember not caring about that game's story, like its actual plot through line at all. Like, I remember that being one of the weaker parts of that game. My favorite thing about 12, the star to me of 12, really is just like I think the combat system it has is really interesting.
The combat system, Balthier and Fran, like I just want to play a game with those two. Like I don't really care about anyone. They're fine, but I don't really care.
Yeah.
So is it a party-based, turn-based strategy game?
It's not quite turn-based.
So this was kind of one of the first games that tried to do quote unquote like single-player MMO style stuff. So you don't really go into like a turn-based battle screen like you do a lot of other JRPGs. Is you encounter enemies on the overworld, and your characters all have abilities that I think have cooldowns, if I remember.
No, I mean, like, it's just a feeling of like an action bar. It's like
it's an action gauge, yeah.
Okay, so I guess pseudo turn-based then in a way is like your gauge fills up and then you take a turn. But you still move your character around during battle, and there's positioning. And the interesting thing is the gambit system, which is basically like programming for your party members. So like it'll set up scripts that they can do. So like if characters below a certain amount of health, then cast heal or something.
Okay.
So it sets up a lot of intricate things you can do with your party setup. So you can basically control a lot of stuff popping off at once that normally would either be really clunky if it was a full-on action game, or it would just be clicking through a bunch of menus if it was a full-on turn-based thing. So they make it like where a lot of stuff can happen quicker in a more like sensible way, which I thought was really neat.
I do have one complaint about the new systems that they put in, though. and it feels weird to complain about this because I really do like the ×2, ×4 because you can get through things quicker, but they have trial mode, and when you beat the game, you would get trial mode, and it's just see how far you can go, and you get items and weapons and gil and whatnot. But you can access trial mode like from the beginning, and you don't get to keep the XP, but you get to keep any treasure, any loot, any gil that you get. You're rewarded for that, and that doesn't sound so bad, except for like when you're level 30 and you're in trial mode for the hell of it, and now you've got, oops, I got a whale whisker. I've got one of the best weapons in the game. And I'm level 30, and now I'm murdering everything. Like, I kind of feel like it was a little too spoon.
Right. Broke the game a little bit.
It's a little broken, but for me, I'm kind of okay with that halfway because I like to grind until my characters are like way too OP. So.
Right. One thing it sounds like they changed from what we were talking about last episode, and sounds like they changed this, but one of the things I thought was kind of neat about 12 originally is you could, in theory, if you grinded enough, which I didn't get anywhere close to doing, but you could get everyone to unlock every square on the license board, and so everyone could do everything, which I thought in theory was kind of neat.
So it's like a Skyrim. Everybody can do everything.
Yeah.
There you go.
Well, they changed that. They changed that for this one.
I know they did the job stuff.
But I mean, the thing with the job stuff though is like we filled out both license boards completely and it was so fast that it was like, all right, sure, there are these accessories that I can wear that convert any gained license points to gil, but maybe I don't want to use that. Maybe I want to have people wear ribbons instead because I don't want to.
Yeah, I kind of like the idea of the job stuff as you were describing it last time, and as a way to kind of streamline the license board stuff. But I don't know, like now hearing that you've like filled them out quickly
halfway
enough,
through the game.
Halfway through the game, they were totally filled out.
That's so crazy. Yeah, that kind of makes me feel like I might actually prefer the original with just the full, huge, enormous, overwhelming license board, and just give you options till the end of time.
I mean, we ended up finishing the game with our characters, all of them having somewhere around 4,000 spare license points, which is an incredible amount for that game.
That's a lot.
So I mean, like, yes, there are accessories that you can wear, but at the same time, I want to wear the thing that makes Vaughn stronger. I don't want to have him wear the thing that gets me more money because I've got infinite money. I don't need any more money.
But it's a cat-eared hoodie. That's adorable. Like, why wouldn't you want to wear that all the time?
I mean, priorities, Paul.
Priorities. Yeah. What was I thinking?
I kind of wish that you could see that because, like, you can see the weapons change to like different weapons, and I wish that he was actually wearing like they would all wear that all the time.
That's funny.
I do have one final question on this for you two. Because the thing I remember liking so much about that battle system was that it felt like a way to control a full party without it being reduced to turn-based inputs. And it's one of, if not the only game I feel like where you're controlling multiple characters in a more like action-y way that I felt like works. Do you guys feel that way about the combat? Did you end up liking it? And feel like it did what it set out to do?
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, and they did a really good job of like, they gave you enough gambit slots, they gave you enough conditionals, enough modifiers. It's a very, very powerful system to the point to where if you wanted to, you could dig in to an individual boss battle and set up a completely different set of gambits for that one boss battle, depending on what that boss does, than just running around in the overworld. And it makes a huge difference. Now, we didn't really have to do that, mainly because we were pretty overpowered for the story stuff by the end of the game. But if you really dig down into that system, you can make your characters extremely efficient on a battle per battle basis. If you wanted to go that far, and that's pretty cool. If you get into that,
because I've played a lot of other games where you're trying to control multiple characters, like other RPGs that are similar in that you're trying to control a bunch of characters in more action oriented setting, and it always feels a little sloppier. And I just thought that gambit system was such a smart way to handle that.
So good, especially when it's like if a character's HP, drops to 40%, then heal them. But that
Yeah.
doesn't start working. You can change it to 50 or 60.
Yeah,
It's
and
so
like what Paul
incremental.
Yeah, and like what Paul was saying, you can really customize it on a per battle basis. So you can really kind of form your strategy around the gambits you're setting to really, like, if you're having problems with a certain thing, you can really go back and rethink and replan and like really set up and customize things in very detailed ways.
And it adds in a layer of complexity with the job system as well, because you might find that you're running into an encounter where you do need to change out the members of your party because of what the classes are, and then you further modify the gambits for those party members. And no, we never got into a battle where we really needed to do any of that. But the fact is like, if you run into a boss battle and die, there were 14 other things to try before just going and grinding. Like, you really could make your party smarter to hone in on that boss's weaknesses if you really wanted to.
Yeah.
Now, what I will say in favor of the only picking 2 job classes instead of the entire board is that I remember the first time playing, I had my group of 3, my 3 amigos, and everyone else be damned. Whereas this time, we kept everyone pretty equally leveled. We used everybody, and I appreciated that. I will say Kingdom Hearts, the first one, came out before or after? I feel like it came out 2004.
Yeah, I don't know the year on Kingdom Hearts, but it was definitely before,
It was before.
because Final Fantasy XII was one of the last PS2 games, and both the Kingdom Hearts games would have been earlier.
And what's funny is I remember Kingdom Hearts had something similar where it was like Gambit System Junior, like super, super basic. And I remember being so pissed off because Donald would never heal me, and he was supposed to be my healer. So I would end up using a potion,
Donald.
and then Donald would heal me, and I'm like, what are you doing, you stupid, stupid duck? So it's kind of funny because I remember having the pain and the heartache from that. So I think I was a little apprehensive about the Gambit system because I'm like, oh, great, I'm never going to be healed and everything's going to be awful all the time. But yeah, this is an well-oiled machine, and nothing really beats the stupidity that you feel consumed by when your character is just standing around and stealing and not doing anything else, and you're like, what's wrong? And then your husband looks over at you and goes, your gambits are messed up. And you go, oh, that's why my character just keeps stealing from the wall and it's not doing anything. Okay.
That's great.
Yeah, some of the gambits that I've accidentally made me the most ineffective player ever.
I definitely remember those situations as well of, just doing really inefficient things because you're like, oh, wait, I did not think through that gambit properly.
It's like, wait, why isn't he using potions anymore? Oh, because I wasn't paying attention and he burned through 90 when I wasn't looking.
And now he's just standing there not doing anything while the rest of the party's getting eaten by a T-Rex. Also, why are there dinosaurs in this game?
Why not?
Why not dinosaurs? That's the real question. Why don't more games have dinosaurs?
I like dinosaurs.
The dinosaurs felt so out of place. There's like tomato creatures running around. There's oh my god, the cactuses in this game are the cutest things ever.
I mean, if we really want to get in the rabbit holes of Final Fantasy enemies, I mean, we can go down this road.
But why are there dinosaurs?
Let's not go down this road.
There's dragons.
I think we've spent enough time on Final Fantasy 12.
Are dinosaurs just wingless dragons?
What'd you say?
I said, are dinosaurs just wingless dragons? Is that what they're going
for? Let's just go with yes on that one.
Yeah.
Nearly flightful dragons.
They're nearly flightful dragons. They can't quite get there, but they want to try.
I'm glad you guys liked it. That's a good game.
Loved it. So good.
Steph, did you want to talk about anything else before we moved on for stuff that you've been playing or not playing?
You know what? My life has been consumed by Final Fantasy 12. I've done nothing, so I got nothing for you.
Yeah, I didn't. I mean, it's pretty much been the same way with me as well. I've been putting a tiny bit of time into Persona, meaning I played an hour before we started recording today, and that's really been about it for the last week or so.
Perfect.
And still just, like, I'll hop on Star Trek Online for about 20 minutes a day, which is not... That's just to click some buttons and then log back off. So I really don't have anything else to talk about video game wise. Flex, what's been going on over in your corner of the world?
Yeah, I also had a period of about a week and a half where I barely played anything. Sometimes life gets busy. I kind of kept poking at Persona 5 and Hollow Knight. I played a little bit of both of those, which I talked about both of those a good chunk last week. So I'll just save further thoughts until I actually play a lot more of them, because I didn't really add too much time into either of them. Persona 5, I finished the second palace, but that was about it. And Hollow Knight, I put a few more hours into. But I am definitely really liking both of those still. Hollow Knight, I like more the more I play it. So I'm really excited to dive back into that. The past few days, though, I kind of just decided to take a left turn. And before I get back to Persona and Hollow Knight, which I will definitely be doing, I have gone down a Pyre rabbit hole.
Yes, Pyre. That's the same people that made Bastion and Transistor, right?
Correct, yes. Supergiant Games. Their new game, Pyre, just came out last week, and I decided I needed to go ahead and get through that to just know what that game is. So I have probably put a good 10 hours or so over the past 2-3 days. Like I've this weekend I've had free, so I was just like, you know what, I'm just going to sit down and play some freaking Pyre. I think I am very near the end of that game. There's a good chance I'll finish it today or tomorrow.
Okay.
And I am really liking that game. It took me a minute to kind of warm up to its combat. And I still have some hangups with it, but I've definitely liked the combat better as it's gone. And for like Supergiant, one thing I appreciate about them is all their games are very different. And I really like just them taking that risk and making something very different. And it's always exciting to see like what new world and systems and whatever else they've come up with. And I think this game, they've like, it feels like the most complete and like ambitious world and setting and characters and all that stuff that they've done yet. Like their art, their writing, like the world they've built, like all of that stuff is super fascinating this time around. Like I'm really enjoying a lot of that. And there is more to read this time too, because it's more of an RPG than the previous ones, which were action games primarily. So there's a good bit of dialogue in this game. And I think the characters are really cool. And the game just looks phenomenal. But there's also, despite them changing up games, there's still like, you can still identify it as like a Supergiant game, like just kind of like the tone and style of the writing. You can like clearly tell it's like, oh yeah, it's these same people. But I'm really digging. I'm really curious to see how the story wraps up, because I'm pretty invested in what's going on. And curious to see how it goes. And the way you impact the story, I'm curious to see exactly how that plays out, because like the insinuation so far has been that like different people's playthroughs could be fairly different. Because the setup of the game is that you've been exiled into this place called the Downside from the Commonwealth. And everybody's basically participating in these rites, which the battles are the rites, which is almost like a 3v3 basketball type thing. It's very strange. But you basically have your team of 3, and you're trying to get a ball into the other person's pyre. You can almost think of that like as, your goal. You're trying to toss the ball in. So it's almost this weird pseudo sports thing, but you go through these rites, and once you complete a series of rites, like the team, they actually call them teams, who comes out on top, like one of their players gets to be unexiled. They go, they get out of the Downside and get to go back to the Commonwealth. So everyone's kind of like struggling for their freedom, quote unquote, which leads to like a whole bunch of different relationships and kind of reasons for doing things and all of that. So it ends up being like a kind of a fascinating tale, and it's an interesting setting for that. And like the characters and races of this world are all very different and unique in an interesting way. And they have just this huge backstory and lore to everything that's going on as well. But I really like how all that stuff plays out. And the battle stuff, the rights has grown on me, because as your characters level up and get new abilities and that kind of stuff, and as you get more characters, there ends up being some pretty good variety into what you're able to do, which has gotten more interesting over time. And of course, the soundtrack is fantastic, as their games usually are.
Yeah, I've heard some mixed rumblings about this game. There's some people who really like it and some people who really don't.
I could see that.
So I'm glad to hear that you weren't disappointed with it, because I know that you were a fan of their previous two games.
Yeah, I don't know yet if I'd say it's my favorite one of their games, but I definitely really like it. And I could totally see how this game would be divisive. And like, I've seen a lot of reviews say it's their favorite Supergiant game, and I've seen other like chatter on the internet say it's their least favorite. So like, by virtue of them making very different games, and they also make, the other thing that's really fascinating to me about their games is their games don't seem to be like, they seem to make the games they want to make. And I could totally see, for every game they've made, I could totally see how it would just not click with someone. So like, they make these very specific games that they want to make, and they're going to resonate differently with different people. So like, I think all of their games are going to hit different chords with different people, which I think is interesting. And I think there are going to be a lot of people who are absolutely going to love Pyre, and there are probably people out there who are going to hate it.
Right.
Yeah, I'm definitely liking it a lot, though. I'm really curious to see how the story wraps up.
So
for my playthrough,
it's prison basketball.
Yeah, there you go. It almost, in a weird way, it almost has kind of a Hunger Games vibe, in the sense of like, you have all these characters that have been exiled, and the winner from the games goes back to the Commonwealth and are almost treated like this weird celebrity of sorts.
I like these character designs a lot. This guy with the horns is kind of awesome.
The character designs are incredible, and the characters themselves have tons of personality. I mean, obviously, so one of the other interesting things is, you know, unlike the Hunger Games, is people aren't dying down there because you're just basically playing like, you know, basketball or something. So that does leave a lot of room for people, since they're not mandated to kill each other. Like, people can team up and come up with schemes and all this stuff. And a lot of the characters have been in the downside for a long time. So you can tell, like, there's a lot of history with a lot of the relationships down there. When you start the game, you are new down there. You're what's called a reader, because you can read. Very novel, I know. But it's apparently banned.
Novel.
Oh, look what I did there. Totally on purpose. But in the Commonwealth, it's actually banned. Like, reading is banned. So like, if they figure out that you're able to read, you get exiled, which is kind of crazy.
You get exiled from being exiled?
No, if you're in the Commonwealth, which...
got you.
Before being exiled. So like, you figure out that you were exiled because you can read. And a lot of the other characters get exiled for all sorts of different reasons. But yeah, it's a really interesting game.
I love how weird all their games are. That's so weird, but really intriguing.
Yeah.
Yep.
My favorite character is this. He's an imp named Tizo, and he's like, they're almost like the imps in that game almost look like little birds, and his abilities in battle do allow him to flap, but he just has this like, you know, like these little squeals and stuff that sound hilarious. But like, okay, so the dialogue in that game is very odd, and you have a cursor and there will be red words in the dialogue. So like, if someone in dialogue said, yeah, there you go. Steph just posted a picture of Tizo in the chat. He's pretty cute. So like, if they said something like the downside in the dialogue, like downside would be highlighted red, and you could hover over it and you'd get a description of what the downside is. And they do that for like all characters and places and gods and like everything in the lore. But when Tizo talks, he just like, it's just like this, his text is just like all of this nonsense because he doesn't speak English, of course. But then you hover over it and it'll like, it kind of gives off this sense that you kind of understand what Tizo's trying to say. So like, you hover over it and it'll be like, Tizo seems to be expressing like his excitement about the upcoming rite or something like that. So it kind of like pseudo translated. It's a really endearing thing.
You sold me on this game just from this little owl imp creature.
Yeah, Tizo's great. But yeah, I mean, the writing as a whole is really strong in this game. And I don't know if I'm curious if they actually made up a language, because you're reading all of the dialogue, but like they'll sometimes say words like there is some voice acting where they'll say stuff, but it's not in English. And I'm curious if it's like some kind of made up language. That is one thing I'd be curious to know. But
yeah, I think
it's
is
a really cool game.
Yeah, and as someone who bounced off both Bastion and Transistor, I'm definitely not really the kind of market audience for this kind of game. But
at the same time, it's a very different game from those. Like, there's definitely some shared like sensibilities being made by the same people, but gameplay wise, it's a very different game as well.
Yeah, I just hate those people. That's pretty much it.
Oh.
No, I'm just kidding.
Holy cow!
I'm just kidding.
You liked Transistor, I thought.
No, I didn't. It was too hard, too complicated, too much.
That's right. You like challenges in video games.
I'm sorry, the video game beat me once, and that was enough to put it down. So,
oh my gosh,
that was enough. Well, Flex, do you have anything else that's been rolling around, or we good to take a break?
Yep, we're good for a break, unless anyone else has any questions on Pyre. But that's what I've been playing.
I think I'm good. All right. Well, we are going to take a quick break, and then when we come back, we're going to touch on a couple of news items. So, news is making a triumphant return for episode number 18. So, we will be back in just a minute. Stay tuned. And we're back. This is ATACS, episode number 18. We're adults talking about cool stuff, and now it's time to talk about the news. Not a ton of news this week, but there are a couple of things that we wanted to touch on very quickly. The first thing to talk about is Casey Hudson. He was the former BioWare general manager. He was the director of the Mass Effect trilogy, which had a really good first game, an excellent second game, and then the third game ending made it the entire internet spontaneously combust. He stepped away for a while, and now he is coming back, and that's he's been attached to their new upcoming IP, Anthem, which they just had their big reveal this last E3. So, Casey Hudson's back. I don't know whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, considering the ups and downs of the Mass Effect trilogy, but that's
He also, I believe, directed the first KOTOR as well. He was up there even before the Mass Effect games. Yeah.
And I don't remember whenever he stepped away. I don't know if he was just like, I'm going to take a vacation, or if it was BioWare was letting him kind of go. I don't know if he was pushed or
I think it was one of those things of like, it was after all the kerfuffle from Mass Effect 3, and he was just like, I'm going to step away and do other things for a little while and break, which is surprisingly not uncommon in video games. Like Cliff Bleszinski did that after the Gears trilogy and stuff like that. Like it's a pretty common thing for like people to devote like, I don't know, 5, 10, 15, however many years to these games. And from what I understand, game development can be very, very draining because you're working just like 80-hour weeks for years.
Right.
So like, it's not that uncommon to see these people step down, but I guess, but it's very, to me, the really curious part of this story is that, Mass Effect 3, there was all the stuff that came from that game and its ending, and people were fairly unhappy about, like, BioWare got a lot of flack for Mass Effect 3, basically. And he took the brunt of that. Like, it kind of, rightly or wrongly, fell on him in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
So, like, once all of the Mass Effect 3 DLC came out, and, like, basically once that game was done and dusted, he left. And it was kind of seen as, like, all right, like, BioWare is kind of, like, cleansing themselves of, like, whatever people didn't like about Mass Effect 3. And then, fast forward a few years, and we have Mass Effect Andromeda, which Casey Hudson would have not have touched at all, and that game got even worse reception.
That did not go well for them.
Yeah, so now it's like almost turned to this weird thing of like, oh, look who's coming back, the guy you once upon a time liked and then didn't like for a little bit of time, but he's back now. So it's kind of a funny thing to me. We'll be curious as well because like BioWare feels like such a different company now than it did 10, 20 years ago.
Right.
So I am a little curious with like Casey Hudson worked on KOTOR and the first Mass Effect and maybe even Jade Empire. Like he has ties, like he's a big figure who has ties to quote unquote the old BioWare. So I wonder if that will have any influence or not.
Yeah, and I'm not saying that it's a good thing or a bad thing. I think it's just more or less a thing. He's went out and he's done his he's had his sabbatical. So we'll just have to see. I think Anthem's pretty far along for them to be having a changeover at this point, but it's also not the that it's something like this has never happened in video games before. I just wonder if that's going to have a positive impact on that project or a negative one, and we may never know. We'll just have to see how that game is received whenever it comes out.
Yeah, I'm curious what that game turns into and what he'll be able to do with it.
It's Destiny, basically, right? Just kidding.
Sure.
So,
because that goes well for people when they make Destiny games.
Yeah, we're that was a thing, and we're not going to talk about that because we can talk about Destiny for a long time.
Yeah, another one of those is coming out this year too.
Yes, there is Destiny 2, and I'm sure that I will watch that come. I will watch all the internet explode, and I'll go, glad I'm not getting involved with this one either. But anyway, so the next thing that we wanted to talk about was the Nintendo 64 Classic. There's been a trademark that's been filed over in, I think it was Europe somewhere. One of those European countries that don't matter. It's not America. I'm sorry, Europe. No, so Nintendo
Never
has
apologize to Europe, Paul.
You know what? I think we should be doing a lot of apologizing to Europe recently. But
that's probably true.
But so they've filed a trademark, and I mean, I really think everyone sort of knew that this was coming. Nintendo released the NES Classic last year. The SNES Classic is coming out this holiday season, and them moving to the 64 Classic is, I think a lot of people saw this coming, but I just kind of have to wonder. It's like, what are they going to put onto this system? They don't quite have the same expanse library that they did to pull from for the NES and the SNES. But and at what point does Nintendo stop making these mini consoles because the nostalgia is not there anymore? I mean, how
3 more years can we get a mini Wii U?
Or in 4 more years, can we get a mini Switch? I mean, I'm
I have to feel like this is probably the last one for now, unless they switch to handhelds.
By the time the mini Switch would come back, like maybe that can help fill in the stock demand that they have for the regular Switch.
Yeah,
I feel like by the time, because like if they kept on this trend, this would come out 2018 holiday. Then the GameCube Classic, which sounds hilarious to say, would come out in 2019. I have to feel by then, if they're going to do any sort of virtual console something, that they would have a good population of games on the Switch at that point. So it might not be worth doing these classic things anymore. I don't know. But also, I would have to imagine that to switch to GameCube, that's more disc-based games. Like, games start getting bigger. Like, at some point, they'll start hitting technical hurdles with this thing, I would guess.
Yeah, I mean, because basically, there's going to be a huge public outcry for Donkey Kong Jungle Beat. And how are they going to get the peripheral set up on your classic system? I mean, is it going to come with like a bongo plug-in?
Yeah, I don't know.
And then at that point, it's like, I mean, why even get the classic? I mean, because the whole point of it is that it's very self-contained. You know what I mean? Maybe they could like make the upside, the bottom of the console double as the bongo.
Yeah,
drums.
I mean, really, they just need to sell a standalone Donkey Kong Jungle Beat machine that has the bongos built in.
Right.
But think about the benefit of a vintage Cube 64 or whatever coming out with another remastered version of Resident
Oh no!
Then we
They
can
also
just
need
like
to
restart
put,
that
the
franchise.
VR Mario Dance Mix on.
Oh no.
No, guys, you're making it worse. You're making it worse.
But they could remaster Resident Evil 4 even more.
I don't think so.
You're right. There are a little bit too many Resident Evil remasters. There's a
There are a
couple.
lot of them.
Yeah.
It was hilarious. Yeah, I mean, they're at the point now where they're doing remasters of remasters. But yeah, it's also hilarious that this is like being leaked before the SNES Classic's even out.
Yeah.
I'll be curious to see how many games they put on there and what games, because like you said, Paul, like the NES and the SNES, like you could easily get 20, 30, 50, I don't know, like there's those consoles have really deep libraries that you can pull from, and the 64, that was the generation where third-party support for Nintendo just went off a cliff. So like starting with the 64, it was really mostly just first-party games. So like you really can only get like maybe 10 good 64 games before you have to start kind of hunting a little harder.
I think that you have a problem getting to 15 games, and I think that even if you do get to 15 games, at least 3 of those ones that you put in there, you actually can't have those because of licensing and the fact that Microsoft owns Rare.
Yeah. That's the other big problem is like half of the good games on the 64 were made by Rare, which I have no idea what the licensing situation there is going to be like.
The licensing situation is Microsoft is going to tell Nintendo, no, you cannot put GoldenEye on your system. Sorry.
Yeah. Well, Microsoft can't even use GoldenEye. That was its own other thing. But
and
stuff like Banjo-Kazooie and Perfect Dark, which Microsoft does have full rights to, like I don't know that Nintendo will be able to get those either.
No.
The only one I'm confident Nintendo retains is Donkey Kong 64, which Rare did make. I know Nintendo can do because they put that out on Virtual Console. I think Nintendo retained anything Donkey Kong.
Okay. So, you know.
So, all right, I challenge. All right, can we get up to 10 games as a group here?
Well, I mean, there's a couple of obvious ones. Mario 64, right? So that's one. And we've got Star Fox 64s too. All right. Somebody else throw one out there.
Ocarina of Time, obviously.
Yeah, but I mean, how much are people going to want that whenever you have the Ocarina of Time and the Majora's Mask remakes on 3DS?
Yeah, it'll be on there though. They've done that with the NES and SNES Classic. They've put games that have been remade.
Have we already decided that GoldenEye wouldn't be allowed? Because
I don't think that's going to be on there. I don't think there's any way.
There's
Mario Kart
Conker's,
64, almost certainly.
Conker's Bad Fur Day.
No, that's also Rare.
Yeah.
Jet Force Gemini is also Rare.
Wave Race 64.
Wave Race, no, that's going to be on there. Maybe Pilot Wings 64.
Maybe. I wouldn't be surprised if Mario Tennis and or 1080 Snowboarding make it on there.
Or some sort of Mario Party might be on
I
there.
would not be surprised if a Mario Party would make
or Cruising!
Dude.
Yeah!
Paper Mario should make it on there.
Yeah, and you know what?
I'm apparently the only one who has.
No. Actually, I think Cruising USA is a good one. I mean, that was a great game. Same with Hydro Thunder. We'll put that one down too. Man,
I mean,
Hydro Thunder was
mediocre
better
racing
on the
games on there. Let's just throw Diddy Kong Racing on there as well.
Hey, Diddy Kong Racing. I mean, look, guys, we're just building this for Nintendo. We need to send them this list.
Excite Bike 64.
Oh, I'm not putting that one on here. That was terrible.
They should put Pokemon Snap on there. I don't know if they would.
Paper Mario. Oh, you already have Paper Mario.
Yeah. So with Pokemon Snap,
you can get 10, 15 games. Whether any of these are good is another question. Obviously Mario 64 and Ocarina of Time are they're obviously amazing games that should be on there.
Yoshi's Story.
What was that WCW wrestling game?
Was it,
There were a lot of them. The popular
there's-
one was WCW NWO Revenge.
Yeah, that thing. Put that on
But
there.
there were probably
Oh,
like
man.
a half dozen other, because I think wrestling games started becoming annual around then.
Yeah, WWF Attitude or whatever that was called.
Yeah, I mean, there was a Kirby game on 64. There was an F-Zero on 64. Like, there are games they could pull from. There was Yoshi's Story. Like, Steph
Oh, you think
said.
they put a Smash Brothers on there?
There was,
Yeah.
the original Smash. That would probably make it on there.
What about the remake they did for Paperboy?
Paperboy?
Mhm.
I don't know anything about that, actually. I
You
must
didn't play
have missed that one.
Paperboy?
I mean, I played the NES version. I don't know. I didn't know that there was a remake for the 64. So, nah.
I guess in theory they could put Turok on there.
No, they're not going to put Turok on there. Turok's terrible. Turok did not age at
Turok
all.
is pretty bad, but
Turok didn't age 16 minutes after it came out.
they should put StarCraft 64 on there.
Okay, now we're going to move on to our next news story because we've obviously lost our minds.
Wait,
Yeah,
what
I
is
mean,
Golden Nugget? What is Golden Nugget 64? Oh, that's a gambling game. Never mind. It's a casino game.
Casino games. Not going to make it on there.
Tetrasphere they could do.
Tetrasphere.
So I mean, there are games they could do. It's just I feel like you start.
I don't want to play any of these games.
Yeah, it's like you're really reaching past like 5. Like there are, like I could pull 5 really good games from this list, but like past that you're kind of reaching. Like the 64 definitely had its 5 to 10 really amazing games, but half of them were rare games, so they probably can't be on here. So then you reduce it down to the roughly 5 really good first party games, and I would be really curious to see what the rest of the games are that fill out that list.
Well, and I'm sure that we will know in about a year from now.
Yeah.
And so
All right, I'm gonna go ahead and put out my prediction here. It's gonna be 15 games, $90. Calling it.
I think that's reasonable. I think that's reasonable.
I don't think it's a reasonable purchase, but hey, that's a good guess.
Yeah, I'm not saying that it's worth picking up, but that's probably what it's going to end up being. Somebody wake me up when they come up with the Game Boy Classic Edition, which is just a Game Boy with a million games on it. That would be great. That's what
It'll just have Tetris.
That's fine too. I'll buy that. Actually, I still have my Game Boy with Tetris in it. So, but going from one questionable console directly into one bad console, Atari has announced the Ataribox because we've all been waiting for a way to play classic Atari games on our televisions.
Atari used to make video games.
Atari used to make video games, and I don't know the full history of all of the mergers, the acquisitions, the liquidations, the bankruptcies, the buyings, but basically Atari doesn't exist in any way, shape, or form as what it did back in the day when it made video games. Now it's owned by a company whose entire purpose is to simply farm out the Atari brand for marketing and licensing and things like that.
For making the Asteroids movie.
Yeah, and, licensing those characters that were in, Wreck-It Ralph or Pixels or any of those other, popular culture type spots for video games. But they, being the form of Atari today, has decided to get onto the mini console bandwagon that Nintendo has started, and they're releasing the Ataribox. And basically, it's very similar to the other systems. It's got some games on it which are not announced. They released a statement which was hilarious in a lot of different ways.
Yeah, their statement is really funny.
And they hinted that this is a box that could also see new games as well. I can't wait to see what kind of new games or new IP is released on an Atari box. But someone save me from the cynicism. This just seems like a blatant cash grab, from the company that owns the Atari name, trying to get in on the the mini console hotness right now.
So,
that's
from
what it comes across as.
Atari, there's Pong, there's
Uh-huh.
Pitfall, And then there's a bunch of games I remember being on like the top 10 most racist games you'll ever play list. So
That's true.
what else is there?
I always get really confused because like my dad had an Atari 2600 and had a bunch of games for it. So like there are a lot of games that I associate as Atari, but I have no idea which ones were or were not actually made by Atari. But if they get a lot of games that were on the 2600, like you think the Pac-Man games, like Centipede, Galaga, Galaxian, like Breakout, like all of that stuff, Qbert, like there are just tons of games that were on Atari consoles back in the day that they could potentially get, I suppose.
Yeah, I mean,
so games that I played on my computer when I didn't have internet because solitaire was too hard.
Yeah, that's
sure.
a pretty good way to say that.
Yeah, and this definitely seems like I'm curious what they're going to put on. It's going to be a bunch of those games, or if there will be any newer things. Like, I mean, Atari has, in some weird ways, kept making games over the years. They did a bunch of publishing, and
I remember seeing their name. Just the Witcher games. They published Assault on Dark Athena. They published Neverwinter Nights. There are a couple of them in there.
Yeah, they've definitely published some things over the years. I mean, those they almost certainly wouldn't get on this box, but I think they've also developed some things over the years. But obviously, Atari's mostly known for their consoles in the late 70s through the 80s.
Right.
So I would guess this is going to be mostly that, but and like Paul mentioned, they indicated that they may be making new games, so I have no idea what that's going to be. But it's just hilarious, just like resurrecting from the dead, like, oh hey, Atari console, sure.
Yeah. I mean, to be fair, the design doesn't look terrible when
it's fine.
when you consider it's trying to mash the 1970s wood grain with a more modern sensibility, I guess is what you would say. But there's no details for anything really, nothing on specs or pricing.
I mean, do we think it's going to have Video Olympics?
I sure as hell hope so.
If it doesn't have Video Olympics, then what are they even doing?
Yeah, it's a weird because like you have to think they're banking on what Nintendo's been doing and how successful that's been. But I wonder how many people actually have nostalgia. I mean, Steph was kind of hinting at this. Like, how many people actually have nostalgia for like Atari games, and like who's that going to sell to?
That's interesting. Let's think about that. So right now. What system would you say that we have the most nostalgia for? Probably SNES, maybe.
SNES is probably given our ages. We're all around the same age. I think SNES is probably our generation.
Yeah. So about how old were we in the prime of the SNES?
We would have been
8.
We would have been about 6 or so when that came out, 5 or 6 when the SNES came out. So by the time it was done, we would have been 10, 11. So yeah, like in the prime, we would have been like 8 to 10.
So how old?
I feel like our age group actually kind of straddles the late SNES, early 64 period. Because like my brother, who's 2 to 3 years younger than us, like he's firmly a 64 nostalgia guy. Like he has no nostalgia for the SNES. So I feel like we're like right at the end of the SNES era.
Yeah.
So the original Atari came out when exactly?
1977.
Jeez. Yeah.
Okay.
So that would be someone born somewhere
like
around
a decade
1970.
older than us.
Yeah. So somewhere around 1970, 1971 would probably be around the target, year.
So people really in their mid-40s.
Yeah, mid to late 40s.
At this point, I guess you have to ask, like, are people in their mid-40s going to be like, I remember that in Grandpa's living room?
Yeah, it's a weird... Yeah, I mean, like I said, my dad had an Atari 2600. Like, I mean, it's... Yeah, I mean, you're really reaching back for the nostalgia. I wonder how many people from that era would actually go buy something like this.
Yeah, especially since there are for so many of these, like the intellectual property has been kind of thrown all over the place.
Yeah.
Like for
Or
instance,
public
like
domain by now for some of
You
them.
know,
Yeah, I
let's
mean,
say-
you could probably play Pong in a web browser.
yeah,
Oh.
or really any of these probably. But I
Yeah,
mean, like for instance, like there's a game I've been playing on my phone that I actually mentioned to you guys called Bouncy, which is basically like a crazy upgraded RPG-ish version of Breakout. And it's like, would we really want to go back to the original Breakout at this point?
Yeah. It's a tough
Because
sell.
it's like,
I mean, those games were so simple back then that like those games have been like those games have appeared in so many places over the years, and more importantly, like the things those games do have just become very standard video game things over the years that have integrated in any number of ways. So it's like going back and just playing them in their original pure form. Like I can see there being some novelty to that, but like it's hard to imagine that appealing to a ton of people.
It's almost like, it almost imagine to me. It's a funny thing to think about. Like, if you guys remember the hacking game in BioShock, it was like Pipe Dream.
Yeah.
Like
Exactly.
to me, it's like all of these games are like games that would be mini games in other games that are out now.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
I mean, you can imagine like some hacking game that's like break the firewall, and if it's really trying to stretch the concept, it makes you play Breakout, like a little mini game with Breakout,
Yeah.
And then
and Breakout's like one of the better games that they would have to pull.
yeah,
and it falls in that bucket. So yeah, it's a weird thing. It's kind of hard for me to imagine this just being like a really short-sighted thing and like falling flat on its face unless they deliver, like it says in here, delivering current. That's going to mean.
It's impossible to know.
The other thing is the tone of this letter is hilarious in that it's like, we know you're hungry for more details, and it's like we're going to share stuff step by step and await Atari community feedback as we do. It's like, what are you?
I didn't even know there was an Atari community from which to solicit feedback.
Yeah, it's like the three people in the world who are just like flipping their minds right now because they love Atari so much. And then like the PS at the bottom is like, subscribe, follow, let us know what you think. It's like they're like the whole tone of this letter seems like they think this is a big deal and they're rallying the faithful and all this stuff.
See, I see it like them being like, I think this is a horrible idea. Somebody please tell us that this is good, that you're going to buy this.
Somebody please stop.
Yeah, someone please verify that this is wanted. Help.
Yeah, it does have kind of that desperate tone to it. It's. I'm curious to see where this goes.
Did you see what I just posted?
What was that?
Oh, play Atari games on the web.
Yeah, William just posted in our chat room all the Atari games apparently that you can play in HTML.
Well,
Nice.
I mean, and this is by Atari. Like, there's Missile Pong, Asteroid, Centipede,
Oh my
Lunar
God.
Lander.
Yar's Revenge.
Okay, but William, there's not a really cool faux wood
combat.
70s feel to the website.
I see.
So I
This
don't-
is only also like 6 games or something.
Yeah, and I mean, in all fairness, Video Olympics isn't on there.
Yeah, well, the most important piece of Video Olympics was Pong, which is on here, so we got that covered.
I see.
I mean,
Is that
the
the game
games
that
that are
had
on
the-
here. So the games that are on this site: Super Breakout, Yar's Revenge, Asteroid, Centipede, Combat, Lunar Lander, Missile Command, and Pong. Like, you've pretty much covered the best games, really.
The Video Olympic is that the one that has like the diving game on it? And you have to like dive off the diving board.
Maybe Video Olympics was a collection of games, and I don't remember what all were in there.
Okay, I think I'm just thinking of Atari Olympics. That was a fun game that I never played on an Atari.
Video Olympics had Pong, Super Pong, Robot Pong, Pong Doubles, Quadra Pong, Foos Pong, Soccer. Based on foosball, this Pong variant has the players control a vertical 3-paddle column. It also had soccer, handball, ice hockey, hockey 3, basketball, and volleyball.
Nice.
So anyway,
that was only a sample of the games. Apparently, Video Olympics had 50 games.
Whoa.
Sorry, I'm reading a Wikipedia page now. We should probably move on.
Yes.
Quadrupong.
All of you stop. We're done talking about the Atari Mini Classic now.
Okay. Yeah, I think we're okay with that.
Please go like and subscribe.
Yeah,
Let them know what you
please.
think.
Yes, don't do that at all. That's terrible. But yeah, so that's pretty much all the news that we wanted to talk about. So, Will, you're playing a lot of stuff. What are you planning on spending most of your time on here in the next couple of weeks?
Steam World Heist.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
That game's great.
I know Flex was wanting to talk about that a little bit, so
And maybe next time we will talk about that.
maybe next time we will. Mr. Flex, what do you have coming up that you want to finish? You're going to get Pyre done, and then you're going to move back over to Persona, or you got something else going on?
You got it. Yeah, I'm going to wrap up Pyre pretty soon, and then I will be back to Persona 5 and Hollow Knight, and hopefully I will have more gaming time to actually hit those harder.
All right.
'Cause they're both good games.
Steph, what about you? What are you going to be doing gaming-wise here in the next week or so before you head back to school?
I guess I'll actually try to play Nier.
All right. As
Automata.
Nier Automata, as they say. And I guess for me, I'm probably just going to settle in and try to get some more hours under my belt for Persona. Not really going to start anything else until I can get that game checked off of the list. So, well, guys, thanks for tuning in. You've been listening to several adults talking about several cool things. This has been ATACS episode 18. I'm your host, Paul from Atlanta, and joining me today was Mr. Will from Greenville, Mr. Flex from Raleigh, and Mrs. Stephanie, also from Atlanta. We'll be back in about 2 weeks with episode 19, so we will see you then.